Hi, this is Jeff White. I'm with Life and Living Now and Versatile Fighting Arts. And this is a continuation of a series that I was doing for one of my students. And we were discussing chakras and the Dantians. In Chinese Qi and Qigong, there are three Dantians. There's an upper, a middle, and a lower. And then also within our meditations, we also have the idea of chakras. And so we've been kind of comparing and contrasting the root chakra with lower dantian. We're coming from root to sacral, and we were using those, comparing those into lower dantian. And now we kind of move into solar plex, and as well as in heart. And then they have the middle dantian. So, kind of just in a short um, comparison of these, both systems describe energetic centers that are kind of in the torso. And they affect emotions, they affect vitality and action, but they come from different cultural maps. With Chinese Qigong, internal alchemy versus Indian chakra, yogic, tantric philosophies as well. So there's going to be different languages, there's going to be different practices, some different theories. There's going to be some overlap. I tend to use both, and I for one, you're looking at, say, with the lower dantian, middle dantian, I'm looking at containment, refinement. And for me, the chakras are more about energy usage, direction, actions, kind of more of a energy vortex wave. Um, you can also look at this in a very broad way of, say, the difference between looking at a particle and a wave. What you expect to see is kind of what you end up with. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out, just kind of knowing that there will be, as you look into these, they are different philosophical systems. To combine them may not map and sync completely together, but it will give you a good idea about how to use this as well. So, um, and we'll kind of talk a little about the origins and location, qualities, common practices to activate and typical effects. So, as we kind of had mentioned, we're looking at middle dantian, and I look at that. I'm going to stand up real quick. Lower dantian is kind of from the navel into the abdomen, and upper middle dantian in most writings are going to be from about heart level, chest to say solar plex. Some qigong schools and theories will include more of the abdomen, so that you could make an argument that the solar plexus actually could be more into the lower dantian. That I will leave for everybody's your own personal preference about how you view that. I have found enough common links to be comfortable, and my own experience primarily to be comfortable. And I kind of look at solar plex being part of that middle dantian. So, from the Taoist internal alchemy, there's in some martial arts, this is where we get the Dantian, the theories. They're energy reservoirs. You have, like I said, lower, middle, and the upper will be from that up here. So it's used in practical Qigong work and internal cultivation. The philosophical framework of Qi is vital energy, and it flows through different channels called meridians, and you can cultivate that awareness and that chi by moving, storing, and transforming that chi. The three dantians are practical focal points for storing and transforming, and they have different usages, but we use them for body breath work, and mind. And different lineages are going to differ on their emphasis and their exact location as well. So I don't put too much emphasis on it's exactly right in this area, because different schools will process that differently. The solar plex for that chakra, Manipura, comes from the Indian Tantric and Yogic. So kind of South Asian for the philosophy, excuse me, systems of chakras. And with that, then is described more classical Sanskrit sources and literature. So the chakras are the psycho-energetic wheels, kind of vortex along the subtle central channel that relate to the body, mind, and then koshas or sheaths of the body, energetic bodies. The philosophical framework um, works more with Kundalini being at the base of your spine, and that energy then coming up, and you'll feel that, or in when meditation, yeah, if you focus on that Kundalini energy shooting up your spine, has some very um, interesting effects. So, but each chakra then has a psychological, a physiological, and as well as a symbolic correspondence. Elements, colors, mantras. In some systems, will map out to different deities. I don't spend time on those. I want more, you know, more pragmatic, I guess. The middle dantian, as we mentioned, is kind of the center of the chest area, kind of around sternum and heart. Different descriptions, as we mentioned, may vary. Some place middle dantian kind of more, just strictly around the heart, slightly below the heart, behind the sternum. Um, it sits kind of between the lower dantian, which could say is below the navel, and then the upper, which begins with throat. Solar plexus chakra is right at the solar plexus. So here's my heart, sternum. Take that down. You can feel that solar plexus that's right here. So it's also at the upper abdomen. So roughly or slightly above the navel, obviously by several inches. Behind the stomach, in front of the spine. Um, so it's kind of usually in Western teaching and yoga teaching is usually right around the diaphragm area. Symbolically, it is tied to digestion, the metabolic center, and a fire and transformation. So we talk about we have fire um, and in the solar plex, as well as water down more in the lower dantian. Now, they are not exact anatomical equivalents. So, the middle dantian, the chest heart area, it may often align more with the heart chakra than in the chakra system, while the solar plex kind of sits lower. In some cases, you may see where it may sync more with the lower dantian. It's perfectly fine. You will draw your own discernments as you go deeper into this. But the practical practices kind of smooth those boundaries out. So, like, once again, I'm comfortable in how I present this from my own personal experiences and study, and I encourage you then to do the same. Um, as terms of qualities and functions, um, with the middle dantian, it kind of acts as a circulatory transformational center, linking the lower dantian with your root energy, and remember the sea of chi and lower dantian, and your upper, talking about mind and spirit. Another way of looking at this, still philosophical, is you have heaven, you have earth in the lower dantian, and then you're dealing with human nature and in the middle. So where you have heart, mind, emotions, which is solar plexus, usually considered the area, the center of the will, determination, resolution. So all that comes also. So ego, it also comes in from the solar plex. So there are sometimes when we're dealing with this energy, we will focus on those. There are some schools that would not focus as much on solar plexus chakra because it deals so much with will and with ego. But I do think in order to have a proper alignment of spirit, ego, and body, it is important that you keep that solar plexus strong and your awareness um, intact with that as well. So the middle dantian is associated with breath, with emotional regulation, with intention and centeredness. You begin to see some correlations here, and refinement of chi, transforming that raw energy into more settled forms. That's all the process of the dantians. And in a martial arts context, we do use the lower dantian as your center of mass and gravity. It's where you move from your intention and your power. You coordinate whole body power from this lower dantian as well. And in this case, you can also move from that middle dantian. Because it also acts as part of that area of intention and using that whole body power. So with solar plex, it governs willpower. So with that chakra, it governs your personal power. It will govern your sense of agency, self-direction, self-concept, self-esteem, Then it goes into digestion and to also metabolic transformation. Uh, for the symbol, its symbol is fire, Agni. Digestion, transformation of food, emotion, and experience. The color tends to be yellow, which actually works well because, remember with our healing colors, we have stomach and spleen, which is earth energy, and that's a yellow. So, right, sitting in that same area, we have solar plex, which also comes off as a yellow, associated with yellow color. Um, Different schools will use different, with Qigong healing sounds from spleen and stomach for that kind of that same area. We have a whoo sound, whereas in yogic tantric, it's more of a ram sound that we would use. Psychologically, then they link to personal autonomy. Once again, back to ego. A healthy use and alignment of the ego is where the proper balance of this chakra will come into play. So, um, and it kind of speaks to your capacity to act in the world. Um, Looking at different practices, ways to activate. Each tradition kind of works within the center. A typical middle Dantian practice, say in the Chinese and the Qigong position traditions, will be a postural alignment. Standing practices, Zhang Chuan, we do the standing meditation with awareness in the center of the chest. So it begins now. A lot of times we'll practice standing meditation, the Zhongchuan, standing like a tree for strength of mind, sitting meditation for depth of mind. So I'll throw that out to you as well. Um, Coordinated breath and abdominal diaphragmatic breathing. We also work to engage that middle dantian as well. It works for lower dantian. It also works with the middle dantian. We will use when I talk about floating hands, qigong movements, mixing fire and water, coming up and just kind of coming, breathing in, resonating with the energy coming up through lower dantian, middle dantian, and coming down. You will hear me talk when I do this as well, resonating with root chakra, um, sacral chakra. Now we're coming in solar plex, heart, and resonating, and you're mixing that fire and water as you come through. So, kind of just some practical applications of being able to do that. With all of as I teach, most of my qigong is very soft. I will be doing another video on a little bit more of a harder qigong and some principles with that. But for right now, looking at this, everything is nice and soft, deep diaphragmatic breathing. All this comes from that middle dantian. Sharing also the microcosmic orbit, which comes actually from both the Chinese Qigong philosophies as well as the Ayurvedic and Tantric yogic philosophies as well. So looking at having that, your energy coming up your spine, across, you're settling down your forehead, connecting because your tongue attached to the roof of your mouth, connecting the upper and the lower. So now we're coming down the front channel, and then it loops at the perineum, comes up the back. So you have a governing channel and a conception channel in the Qigong. And we also have that small circle microcosmic within the chakras as well, within that meditation. So they will share that. But with that, you're looking at circulating energy, chi, from lower to upper dantians. Visualization, I would say feeling this warm, soft. You want to feel that centeredness in your chest. You want to try and feel the energy that is in those areas and begin to resonate with them. And we find that this will happen over time. I have one student, he said he felt it about 3 months. Another student had felt about 10 months. But each one will get there with consistent practice and focusing. And with it, you have to feel this. You can't think about it. We initially start imagining it often and trying to visualize. So we're kind of in our head, but you need to switch and get it into, into feeling, into the heart mind. And when you then take your mind, put in your heart, and you combine those two, then you'll begin to feel more of this energy. It's the best way I have to explain that. And that just takes time and practice with all of this. And so I would encourage a daily practice with meditation and Qigong and using the chakras and using the Dantians as well. Um, in terms of to kind of wrap up the idea of the middle dantian, in the internal alchemy practices that transform the emotional, the raw chi, the refined chi will happen also within the dantians through breath, through intent, and through posture. Now, moving into say a typical manipura to social, solar plexus practice, then that is pranayama. So for me, very similar. Qigong is energy work, breath work, energy work. Pranayama is energy work, breath work. Just simply, it's a different terminology. So with that, it wants to stimulate the lower and the solar plexus area. It wants to stimulate that using the breathing techniques. I still use the deep diaphragmatic breathing. I will also pull more up on the pelvic floor a lot when I'm doing those types of breathing when following microcosmic orbit. So I will begin to use more abdominal locks and things like that we've talked about some. But the idea is the fire, the Agni, is part of the colors and the verbiage for that. Visualization of this yellow light or a spinning yellow wheel at the navel, in the solar plexus area. As you mentioned, the seed mantra for that is Ram, and the yogic we will use for Qigong healing sounds. Things like sun salutations, core strengthening sequences are all good for developing into the chakras and your awareness. A lot of this is going to be developing your awareness of that energy coming in. A lot of the Kundalini meditations are good for this as well. Now, if you're looking at what effects, what reported outcomes, with middle dantian, a focus on that, you're going to have an increased sense of inner balance. Very important. You're going to have increased sense of calm centeredness, emotional stability from focusing on the middle dantian. You'll have a greater connection between breath and posture, improved coordination and whole body integration. A brief note on the breath and posture. The more that we have focused on deep diaphragmatic breathing and feeling how can we always get that deep breath, it immediately causes a change in your posture. Sometimes you'll feel that, okay, maybe I was sinking my chest, maybe I was dropping down and I'm cutting the airflow, but now I can breathe. And I learned that if I stick my head up straight, it's one thing, but if I tuck my chin, I actually increase the ability for greater airflow and I straighten my spine. When I'm allowing and thinking about a piece of rope or twine tied from my head to the ceilings, pulling my spine in one direction as I drop my tailbone in another, I'm lengthening that spinal cord, but I'm also enabling myself to breathe much better, much deeper, more robustly. Also focusing on solar plexus. So improved digestive and metabolic regulation happens in many people with focusing on lower dantian. It's subjective, but encourage it. I find that it works. Um, there's a tendency towards increased energization with drive, focused activity because you're focusing on that center of will, this intention that is part of that solar plexus. Um, Overstimulated can increase to irritability. So you want to have everything in balance. The physiological activation is through the diaphragm, the sympathetic tone, as the parasympathetic and nervous system as you engage that. Now, with any of this, don't force breath. Don't get into this and think, without the guide of a good teacher, um, there you can hyperventilate. There's different ways of activating energy using your breath, and it's a whole science. I would encourage you to look into it. I primarily would teach out for most students until we go deeper more of just diaphragmatic breathing, both regular breathing as well as reverse abdominal breathing are the two that I find have the greatest benefit. There are other ways that you can also use breath as well, and the Ayurvedic traditions have a whole science behind that. Now, you do want to be careful when you are working in this area of solar plex and emotions that if you have people who have stored trauma, a lot of times you'll find that as you start to focus with the heart chakra as well as with the solar plex. So we'll bring it up now with solar plex chakra that you will find that if people are holding trauma, that they will begin to re-experience some of that. It will get some of those waves. It's a good thing if they're aware of it and they can allow it to be without adding to it or taking away. Go write it, go deal with it. The whole idea is you have repressed these emotions and they've been stored in your energetic body. And this is beginning, this work, this attention is beginning to unlock some of those repressed emotions and thoughts. And so you want to be able to work with that, understand that it can crop up, not to be confused or disconcerted by it, but understand this is something for me to work on and this is a good thing, and it allows for you to free up that trauma, to get rid of it, to be free of it, to affect healing. Incredibly important. So I just kind of just I throw that out there that when working with trauma or intense emotions, anything in the chest, core, and abdomen may release some of that. So just be aware. You can do short general practices at first. You to go for as long as you're able to focus and your discipline, and that will build over time as well. So with all of this, remember it's consistency over intensity is probably the best way that I have of phrasing that. That when if I'm consistent, that intensity will build. And I have had some incredible experiences as I've gone through and hit different states and then progressed into different stages. So, the idea is be gentle with yourself, be easy. The more that you try and force this, the less effect you'll have. If you lead your energy rather than push it, it's a different mindset. When you are leading your energy, you're already assuming it's there. You're giving mental ascension that this is active, this is already there. If I'm trying to push, I'm trying to make something happen. We want to align, and that's what this helps us with, is to align with that energy. So tune into your nervous system as well. Um, if you find where all of a sudden you're feeling dizzy, if you find there's some sharp pain that suddenly has cropped up, breathe through it, relax your mind, settle your emotions, take a break, come back through it. I suggest going and writing, and journaling is a huge help with all of this. Now, when you're looking at, as we had mentioned, comparison, contrasting middle dantian with solar plexus chakra, the middle dantian comes out of Chinese Qigong theory. Manipura as is from the Kundalini map with solar plexus. So different metaphors, different practices. Location, middle dantian is typically a little bit higher, but I consider it to be both in the same area, just kind of just right below the solar plex. Primary function, middle dantian, once again, emphasizes integration. It emphasizes circulation and refinement, containment of chi between the lower and the upper centers. It's a bridge, it's a transformer. With the uh, um, Manipura with the solar plexus, it emphasizes more transformation as well as personal power and metabolic fire with the sense of digestion and will. So it's the seat of will and intention. The elements. Manipur, fire, yellow is the color. With the middle Dantian, yellow would also be. Um, Qigong for practices, the microcosmic orbit. They will also use pranayama, mudras, visualization. Both use breath, attention, and movement, but the intentions differ slightly. So that's one of the things you can kind of look at. So here's an idea. Um, if you want to look at practices, do these gently. Stop if you feel uncomfortable. Avoid right now any breath retentions unless you are familiar with them. Um, I would say sit or stand. When you're doing middle dantian centering, you can either sit or stand, soften your shoulders, place your hands slightly over the center of the chest or the sternum, or if I'm standing, I'll be out here kind of solar plex. If I'm sitting, I want to make sure, sometimes I'll sit in a chair, but I don't want to have my arms resting on a chair. You notice that it raises my shoulders. When I drop, I'm in more of a natural position. So you want to breathe slowly, deeply into the belly for say 6 counts in, 6 counts out, whatever is a comfortable ratio, but you want these deep diaphragmatic breathing. Let the breath naturally expand. Um, Let it fill the rib cage, lift the sternum slightly. On the in breath, imagine drawing in a warm, gentle light, okay, into the center of the chest. On the out breath, you can imagine tension flowing out from your body. So as I'm breathing in light and I'm letting tension go. You can finish with 3 long, relaxed inhales and kind of rest. But it really is just this breathing in, breathing out. I may breathe in and I may raise energy up, filling into middle dantian, and then I will let it descend and compress into lower dantian. I can let it breathe and expand in middle dantian, and because I'm focusing on that solar plexus chakra, then I can compress it into that chakra as well. I'm mixing a little bit, but that's how I do my practice. With Manipur, with that activation, once again, sit comfortably. Same thing as if you were going to be in your meditation. Do gentle abdominal diaphragmatic breaths. Inhale to expand the belly. Exhale to draw the navel towards the spine. In this, you're going to visualize once again this warm yellow sun at your solar plexus. When I'm breathing in, my focus is just on this pulsing of energy in the solar plex. I imagine this brilliant yellow light, but my mind is just there. Now, you can have mantras. You can say, I am capable. For me, if I'm going to use a mantra, my mantra is just simply, I am. Okay? I am. And it takes you back, leaving part of our conversation. By focusing on just that I am, you realize that you are just that. And ask you, what are you? I am. I am spirit. I am spirit with soul. I am spirit, soul, and body. But the last I am, once you get rid of that, you realize that what you really are is spirit. You are consciousness, you are awareness, and that's where this I am. So for me, my mantra is always I am. But with this, you can add in I am capable, I transform, whatever you may wish. This is part of your journey. And once again, end by just noticing the sensations. Absorb is the way that I like to put it. So, you can kind of blend these practices. I may start with lower dantian grounding, okay? And then I'll raise that warmth into a chest-centered middle dantian for emotional clarity. Then I'll energize the solar plex through that focus for willful action and strengthening intention. And I'll use slow, mindful transitions 3 breaths grounding in lower belly, then 3 breaths allowing that sensation to rise, and then 3 breaths moving that attention to the solar plex. Now that is how I do my morning meditations and my daily meditations. I go through middle dantians, and I go through internal organs, and I go through chakras, and just activate and become more aware of each of those. So if your goal is more emotional regulation and say relational presence, then you're going to emphasize middle dantian practices, chest centered breathing, compassionate intention. Remember, you're combining the two. If your goal is increasing motivation, if your goal is to digestion or assertive action, then you're going to emphasize more solar plex, because we're going to build that willpower and that intention. So I'm going to do more work with that. So just remember that the practice content with a lot of the Taoist internal arts is about longevity, and in some parts, I won't say quality of life, but quality of life so that you live longer, and transformation of chi. With more Kundalini and chakra work, then the aim might be more awakening and raising that energy. Choosing techniques that align with your intention becomes important as you deal with those. So, there's no single universal translation between the Dantian and the chakra systems, because they are two different philosophical systems. They're different cultural lenses, is a good way of looking at it. They will describe the subtle phenomena. Attempting to direct, a one-to-one mapping will lose the nuance. So there's really no need to do that. You don't need to map them entirely, but having an understanding about what those teachers saw. And once again, don't just go after, don't just believe what they taught. Go for the deeper dive to go after what it is, that knowledge that they were after. And so you can practice these as complementary works, which is how I do. I just kind of view they present different aspects of energy. So I would encourage you to try it and for yourself. And we will move on next time with still middle dantian, but also the heart chakra. Thanks, and have a very good day. If you like this, feel free to subscribe. You'll probably see this on Life and Living Now on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe. We would love to have you, and we teach a online qigong free sessions. We're back to Saturday mornings, 9 o'clock Mountain Time, where I am in New Mexico. So I think that's 11 o'clock Eastern. I'll let you work it out. All you need to do, if you would like to be part of our qigong practices, is simply to email me at lifeandlivingnow@gmail and asking to be put on the list, and we'll send out those links on Friday. So thanks much, and have a great day. Bye bye.